My name is Trudy Hari. I'm the Director of Individualized Support Services for Mark Community Resources. I've been at Mark for over 30 years, and in many of those years, I've helped individuals with their benefits. Although there's a lot to learn, there doesn't seem to be any one place that we can get answers, or there's someone to teach us the in and outs of benefits that are available, especially individuals with special needs. And even though I've been doing this for a long time, I still have families and friends asking questions that I have no clue on how to answer. A few months back, I was invited to a forum much like this, and although it's limited in time and cannot answer everyone's personal questions, I found it very educational. That's why I was determined to have a forum like this on this subject. Our presenter tonight is Stuart Hawkins. Stuart did a presentation on ABLE accounts for Mark a few years back. And now that Connecticut has an ABLE plan of its own, Mark intends to have Stuart return in the fall to give a presentation on that. Stuart's been a financial advisor for 30 years, focusing on special needs planning since 2005. He's a parent of an individual with special challenges. He's on the board. He's the board chair of Plan Connecticut, volunteers as a Special Olympics coach, and is involved in raising funds for pediatric brain tumor research. And before I turn you over to Stuart, I think you all have noticed that this is a webinar without the ability for participants to speak, and there's no chat feature. But there is a question and answer button. Some of you have already started to use that. Please use that to ask the questions. I'll be monitoring it, and I will get Stuart's attention so that he can answer as many questions as possible. And I hope you find this session as enlightening as I did. So Stuart, on to you.
Beautiful. Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties that we're having here. Hopefully we can make it through this fine. I do encourage questions, and if Trudy does ask, relay a question to me, and it's something that I am going to cover further on in the presentation, I will let you know that. So, as Trudy said, I am a financial advisor, been one for 30 years, and have specialized in working with families that have children with special needs for the past 15 years. The reason being, I have a 31-year-old daughter who has challenges. She was born with a brain tumor and has had 24 surgeries and a year and a half of chemo. And as a result of all that, she has a brain injury. So she does receive benefits through the brain injury waiver of Connecticut, and has gone through school, special education, the after school, and on to employment. So our family has dealt with many of the issues, and I've dealt with many of these issues via all the families that I've met with over the years. So while I don't know everything, I know a lot, and I do want to stress that this is intended for informational purposes only. Everybody's situation is a little different, and there are a lot of nuances to this. So with that said, hang on, I gotta get, there we go. So basically, government benefits really boil down into two main categories: those that are means tested and those that are non-means tested, otherwise known as entitlements. So those that are means tested, what does that mean? You have to have a financial need. That could be Supplemental Security Income, SSI, Medicaid, food stamps, SNAP benefits, Section 8 housing. All of those benefits, there are income and asset limits on them. Now, the entitlements, things like Social Security disability, are not means tested. Somebody who was working and was making $1 million a year, let's say, and then all of a sudden was in a car accident and couldn't work anymore, they would still be eligible for Social Security disability because they've paid into the system. Medicare is similar. We all, when we reach 65, are eligible for Medicare. Some people younger than that. ABLE accounts, relatively new. We'll talk a little bit about that. And as Trudy mentioned, we'll be doing a deep dive into that in the fall. And then obviously IDEA education. So diving right in, Social Security definition of disability is different when you're under 18 or over 18. Very similar. The one big difference is when you're over 18, there's something called substantial gainful activity. I apologize. When I open this up today, this is the first presentation of 2021, and I was not prepared to change these numbers, but I can give them to you. So substantial gainful activity down the bottom there, instead of 1260, that's now 1310 a month. So people making more, consistently more than 1310 a month, the government will deem them not to truly be disabled, and that could have an impact on the means tested benefits. So that's really what it's about, is the ability to earn Social Security's definition of substantial gainful activity. So SSI, Supplemental Security Income. This is for people that are disabled age 65 or older and that have limited assets and income. Remember the whole means tested thing. Now the maximum monthly benefit in 2021, we got a 1.3% increase, is now $794. Now that may be reduced for what's called ISM. I'm going to get into that in more detail in a minute. Now, the maximum countable resources, that I do not believe went up, it's been the same for a long time, is $2,000. So you can't have more than $2,000 in the individual's name and qualify for supplemental security income. Now, what can you have and still receive Social Security, SSI? Not to be confused with SSDI, which I'm going to go into in detail. So what is a resource? Anything that can be turned into cash to be used for food or shelter. You're going to hear me say those two terms fairly often, food or shelter. Now, what are we allowed to have? Believe it or not, the individual, while they can only have $2,000 in, say, a bank account, they can own a home. They can have a car, household goods, a computer, iPad, all things like that do not count as a resource. Now, what is income according to SSI? Again, anything that the individual receives in cash or in kind that could be used to meet food or shelter needs. Now, what doesn't count? The government allows us to disregard the first $20 in any kind of income. And then the next $65 of earned income. So earned income is if we work and we earn a paycheck. So essentially the first $85 is free and clear a month. After that, again, ISM, in-kind support and maintenance, which is free or reduced cost food and shelter. Above the cap, and I'm going to talk more about that, does not affect the Social Security benefit. Below that cap, it does though, and again, I'm going to talk about that. So what reduces the SSI payment? Anything over that $20 general income exclusion, you cannot give somebody cash. Okay, a cash payment, here's $100 a week. That is not a good thing. That would be a dollar for dollar reduction off the SSI payment. Okay. Again, ISM is capped at the 1/3 of the federal benefit rate, which is that 794 number. After $65 of earned income, Social Security gets reduced. For every $2 somebody makes, $1 comes off, or 50 cents on every dollar, say it a different way. If the student is still in school, they can earn a fairly substantial amount of money, up to $1,900 a month. I have seen several times where Social Security was reducing the benefit for somebody who was still in a school program and they were getting paid a nominal amount. So just keep that in mind if anybody is in that category. Any questions that you think would come into play, Trudy?
Right now, perfect timing. One of the question that I have in front of me is, does the change in the education law that students can be educated until age 22 affect SSI benefits?
That's not a change. It's been that way for a long time. And no, that doesn't change SSI benefits. I'm going to talk about when to apply for SSI, but the answer to that would be no. And I don't know why somebody thinks that's a change in the law. That's been for a long time now, that the education, after high school, if they're on a IEP, can continue. But that has nothing to do with the SSI payment.
Thank you. That was
Anything?
the question that we have for right now.
Okay. Okay.
They just responded, the law has been up to 21st birthday until 2020.
I did not know. It depends on when your birthday is. Some people went to 22. If the law changed and you can go past that for everybody, is that what the person is saying? I'll have to check into that. But the answer to the question is still, that has nothing to do with SSI.
Okay, thank you.
But I will thank you for that. I did not know that they changed anything to do with that, because I know it was, I always say 21, 22, because it depends on when the child's birthday was. So maybe somebody out there can educate me on that. So here we go. I talked about the ISM, in-kind support and maintenance, and the 1/3 reduction rule. What is in-kind support and maintenance? If someone or something, i.e. a special needs trust, let's say, is helping to pay for food or shelter, the SSI payment is reduced by 1/3. So that 783, which is now 794, would be reduced to 1/3 of that. So 5, whatever that number is. I've not done the math on that. So this is what I have written right under there, is right out of Social Security handbook. You're not living in another person's household. You live in your own household if you are liable to the landlord for payment of any part of rental charges, or you pay at least a pro rata share of household expenses. What does that mean? What Social Security wants to do is they want to ask families, how much are the expenses to run the household? And they will divide that number by the number of people there that live there. And they'll determine for some people that their loved one who has special needs living with them cannot afford to pay their fair share of the expenses. If they can't pay their fair share, then they feel that somebody else is providing in-kind support and maintenance for food and shelter, and therefore the benefit will be reduced by 1/3. Now, if you turn around and charge a fair and reasonable rate, a market rate for that person to live in the household with you, then there should be no ISM reduction. This is one of the biggest errors that I see people, and it's not necessarily an error on the family's part. They're just listening to what Social Security is telling them, and do not have the knowledge that if you charge a fair market rate for room and board to live in the house, expense reimbursement, whatever we want to call it, then there should be no reduction. Okay. Another way around that is you can pay expenses out of an ABLE account, housing expenses out of an ABLE account. And that is clearly codified with Social Security and the IRS that does not induce a ISM reduction. So if anybody out there was not getting before any reductions for jobs and income, did not start at 783 last year, we should be talking, because there are workarounds to that.
Let me interrupt with a question. How do you obtain a change in benefits to reflect housing when the original application didn't seek to have housing reimbursement?
It's not a housing reimbursement. It's how they calculated the individual's living situation. So it's not a matter of calculating how, it is a matter of going back to Social Security and saying the individual is now paying just as anybody off the street would pay if they were to rent a room in my house. Therefore, I should not receive, or my child or my loved one should not receive that reduction. So there are ways around it, and I'd be happy to get into details with somebody individually. There'll be an opportunity for somebody if they want to talk to me about their specific situation, and I can walk them through what they need to do. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay. So when do we apply for Social Security, SSI? We apply at age 18. That is when they are a legal adult. Okay. They no longer look at parents' income and assets. Now, under 18, some children will be eligible for SSI benefits, depending on the family's income and assets. You have to have very low income and assets for the child to qualify. But remember, at age 18, they now become a legal adult, and they no longer look at the parent's income and assets. They only look at that individual. That's why we don't want to have money held directly in the name of the individual if they are under age 18. Savings bonds. That's a big issue. Some people like to have savings bonds, and they forget that those count. Okay, and you might apply for Social Security, but you forget that you had savings bonds that grandma and grandpa gave the child a long time ago. And I have seen numerous times, happen to me personally, where they come back and say, you had a savings bond. For me, they needed us to prove that it was liquidated. And I think we were talking about an $80 bond. And then they realized it was all a mistake, but not till after I had to go down to the Medicaid office. And so please remember, savings bonds do count. College savings plans, 529 plans, are usually okay because those are not held in the child's name. They're usually held in the parents' or the grandparents' name. But again, with the ABLE account, we can move money now. That was a law that was changed a couple years ago, can move money from a 529 to an ABLE account. It is limited to $15,000 a year, which is the contribution limit for an ABLE account. So how do we apply for Social Security, SSI? You can generally, well, now with COVID, definitely apply online. You can make a phone call to them, start the process online. Prior to this, you could go down in person and have a individual meeting. But what I like to tell families, you know, after we've been emphasizing and encouraging individual strengths, now it's time to focus on functional limitations and how they may impact their ability to work and function in life. We want to be truthful but realistic, and we want to detail worst day scenario. So I'm just using this as an example. I'm not saying that they're going to ask you this, but should they ask you, does your child need assistance with dressing? And you might say, no, they put clothes on themselves. You know, we might think of that literally, where we're buttoning their shirt. But if your child needs to be reminded that it's cold out today and they need to bring a coat, or it's going to rain today, they need their raincoat, then they do need assistance with dressing. Bathing, do they need assistance with bathing? You say, no, they take a shower. Do you ever have to say your hair's greasy, you need to take a bath? If that's the case, or remind them to brush their teeth, then they do need assistance. We have to, as parents, we have to step back and say, if I weren't here tomorrow, how would the individual function? That's how we need to be viewing when thinking, when applying for benefits. Okay, Medicaid. This is medical benefits, but it's actually not just medical benefits. Now, this is a means tested program that is both federal and state dollars. It is managed by the Department of Social Services in Connecticut. And it provides health insurance for low-income individuals, families, and children. You have Husky A, B, C, and D. C is what we need to be concerned about. That's Husky for an individual with a disability. This is also the same program that provides nursing home care. Now, I like to call this a means tested entitlement. If you meet the eligibility requirements, there are no waiting lists. In Connecticut, the most you can have in an individual's name is $1,600. That is the asset limit. That is the same number for somebody who is going into a nursing home. It's not that they're discriminating against our loved ones that have disabilities. It's just the rule to qualify for Medicaid in Connecticut. So the asset limit we generally want to keep in our children's name is below that $1,600 mark. Even though Social Security says you can have 2,000, in Connecticut, 1,600 is the number. Any questions, Trudy?
Yep. One is, will slides be available for download after presentation? And the other is, if a child is on parents' health insurance plan, what is the obligation to the private insurance to mention that he also qualified for Medicaid?
There's nothing wrong with telling the private insurer that they have Medicaid and vice versa. A lot of people do have duly eligible for Medicaid and private insurance. So there should be no issue with that as well. And I can get the president. Are you recording this, Trudy?
Yes, we are.
So there's the answer to the slides.
Okay.
Okay, so Medicaid waivers. Medicaid waivers, what they are is it allows the state to waive the rules that generally apply to the federal Medicaid program. Remember, Medicaid is both a state and a federal program. So the federal government has these rules, and they allow each individual state to manage their own program. And that's what's through what we call Medicaid waiver. And remember, I mentioned that Husky C is required in the gateway to these waivered services. Now, how do we apply in Connecticut? We can just go to Connect CT, go on Department of Social Services website and apply for Medicaid for Husky C. That is what's going to get us access to anything through the Department of Developmental Services. The I should back up, sorry. Home and community-based services, that's what we're interested in when we're talking about Medicaid waivers for our population. Here, the state can target specific groups and they can cap the total number of people served. Remember on the nursing home, I said, it's a means tested entitlement. You are entitled to Medicaid, a nursing home. There is no waiting list to get into a nursing home, but there is certainly waiting lists to get into state supported housing, DDS housing. So the state can have waiting lists for these services. So what are the waivers? The DDS waiver. We have the comprehensive waiver. That would be the full day supports and living, group home, all of that would be under a comprehensive waiver. Individual and family support waiver. That could be where somebody's coming in and helping with the individual living in the family home. And then employment and day support waivers. That's what pays for day programs that are generally provided through not-for-profits. Your Department of Social Service waivers, Connect Home Care for the elders. That's where people want to stay at home and not being a nursing home. The state allows people to hold more assets, and with the theory being it costs less money for somebody to be at home than in a nursing home. Katie Beckett waiver is for people, families with children under age 18 that have high medical expenses. PCA, personal care attendant, that would be for somebody, maybe they have, they're a quadriplegic and they need somebody to come in the morning and night. ABI, acquired brain injury, that's where my daughter received some of her service. And then autism waiver, which is, again, a very limited waiver. DEMAS waivers, that's Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And even though this is not a waiver, I throw it in here because it's important to know. SO5 Med Connect, Medicaid for the working disabled. It has higher asset and income limits. It's generally more for people who were not originally disabled, became disabled, and they're afraid they're going to lose their government benefits if they go back to work. So the government, Social Security, has all these programs to try to encourage people to get back to work. Any questions, Trudy?
No, but I do want to add on my end of it, as far as the DDS waivers are concerned, if you're having any issues with the waivers or the benefits that are associated with DDS, you can call your DDS case manager. There is a DSS waiver liaison, and they can help straighten out any issues you may be having. So
thank you for that, Trudy.
That's it.
Okay, moving on. SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Plan. It's the new name for what everybody refers to as food stamps. Now, these are federal dollars, come down from the federal government, and it's designed to help low-income individuals, families for food. It is now all done via a debit card, EBT card, called the Connect card. And they are administered by the state Department of Social Services and generally a local agency. And there are factors that determine eligibility and amount of money. Now, the maximum monthly benefit for individual with no income is $194 a month. Now, keep in mind, anybody that is living with their parents and they are under age 22, the government is going to assume that they are in the same eligibility determination group. Over 22 or 22 and over, then they can stand on their own. But keep in mind that food, that card is supposed to be used solely for the benefit of that person. There should not be any commingled meals. It is their food. And then there's, say, the parents' food. And they will ask that question. So perhaps your child eats special foods, eats different foods, doesn't eat at the same time as parents. They would be eligible, but you have to know how that question needs to be answered. Questions?
None at this time.
Oh. And how do we apply for this? 201ct.org. There are not-for-profits. There's a calculation tool on there that you can put information in and see what the individual is eligible for. So Section 8, housing. This is very, very complicated stuff, but it really boils simply down into two different programs, and that is tenant-based or project-based. Tenant-based is, well, I'm going to go project-based first. Project-based is when you see a housing facility and it's for low-income people. It may be senior housing. Any place that says senior housing would also include somebody who has a disability. They don't necessarily advertise that, but that is the law. Tenant-based housing, that's what most people would prefer. That's where the housing choice voucher, I call it the golden ticket, goes with the individual. So the individual, if they don't like where they live, they can move to another place. And the voucher will pay 1/3 of a prevailing rate for whatever area the person lives in towards the rent. 1/3 of their income is all they are expected to pay for that. Now, there are very, very long waiting lists for this. Keep in mind that this is not just for people who have disabilities. This is for anybody who is low income. So our community has a lot of competition for these programs. Same thing with SNAP benefits. That's not for people who solely have disability. That's just for low income. So there are very long waiting lists for any of these. What I do encourage, if your loved one may have the ability to live, somewhat independently, perhaps there could be somebody from Mark coming in the morning, the evening. Trudy, do you do that in your organization where you have people, folks living independently, and you guys are coming in and?
That is actually the department that I run. So yes, we have a combination of people that live on their own and have anywhere from 4 to 20 hours a week of staffing, or individuals that even live with their family members, and we come in the morning to help them get ready for work, or evenings so that the family members can have a little respite right up until I have someone that has third shift hours so the family can rest.
Okay. So I encourage anybody who falls in that category to put their loved one on the waiting list, because it's even if you don't see your child living independently for a long time down the road, because the waiting list is so long, and how you get on that waiting list is you have to sign up and you get an email when things open, when the waiting list opens up. Doesn't mean that there's a placement or a voucher available. You have to put your name on the waiting list. And the Housing Choice Voucher Program, it does not matter. So you could get an email that New London opened up their Housing Choice Voucher Program waiting list. That's what you want to put your loved one on, because they don't have to live in New London. That ticket goes with them anywhere they want to live. So they could live in the same community that they're living now, but they only have to pay 1/3 of their income towards their rent. Whereas project-based, it's solely project. So if you see and the email come across that says New Haven is opening up their such and such housing program, and it's a specific project-based housing, then you have to live there. And I don't put my daughter's name on that list. Okay. Lifeline. Here's a quiz for you, Trudy. It's called the Obama phone. The program's called Lifeline. What president started the Lifeline program?
I have no idea. I would assume Obama, since it says Obama phone.
It's a trick question though, Trudy.
Earlier, but
it was actually goes all the way back to Ronald Reagan days. He felt that anybody should have the ability to call 911 regardless of their income. And so you'll see on the bottom of your phone bill, your cell phone bill, it may say something like a universal connectivity charge. It might be $1, $1.50, $2. That's what funds this program. Why it's called the Obama phone now is because Obama changed it to having smartphone technology, because everybody has smartphones now. So it became the Obama phone. So it's a free phone, proof of government benefit, anything like SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, SNAP benefits is your ticket into this. It's limited in the minutes, but you can add data and minutes for additional fee. You can use your own phone as long as it works on the Sprint network, and you can keep your existing phone number. Okay, so I do not avail myself, my daughter, of this program, but I do know people that do. They say the free phones aren't very good, but if the person already has a phone that works on it, and again, it has to work on the Sprint network, and that's, I guess there's just two different technologies. You couldn't take an Apple phone that works on Verizon network and say, I want to switch to Sprint. Same thing here. So if it works on the Sprint network, then you could avail yourself of this benefit. That's it for the Obama phone. Okay, now moving on.
Hold on a second.
Yep.
I have a question. 1,000 minutes over what time period? Do you know?
That's a good question. That would probably be a month, right? Yeah, I would say a month. 1,000 minutes is, yeah, I would say a month. Yeah, a month. I'm going with a month. That's a good question. I never thought of that. Now that I think it's a month. So Social Security disability is a non-means tested. It's an entitlement. Okay, again, as I mentioned, somebody, the guy making $1 million got in a car accident, can't work anymore. He qualifies. He paid into this system. It's based on our own work record. Those are those FICA taxes we pay. And generally, older folks need 40 quarters in order to be eligible. Individuals that deemed disabled younger than 30 need fewer quarters. And you can have concurrent benefits. So typically what will happen if the individual has the ability to work a little bit, they'll have both they'll start off with SSI, hopefully at age 18, because they applied at age 18, Trudy. I didn't get into that, and I think I missed that whole thing. Then I often find people who don't apply right at age 18. They don't get around to it, and they are losing a lot of money because every month they wait is another $794 that the individual has missed out on. So if you wait a year, you've lost out on $794 times 12. If you apply right when they turn age 18, it could be, depending on their disability, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, and they will pay back to the date that you applied for that. So the application date is the first of the month following the month you applied, they pay back to Social Security. So ideally at age 18, the individual is getting SSI. And depending on their ability to work, they might have an income, a smaller income. And then it starts morphing from SSI to SSDI. And you can have both SSI and SSDI off of the individual's own work record. And then as their quarters build, they could be fully covered on SSDI. My daughter is now fully covered on SSDI, no longer on SSI. The beauty of that is that unlike SSI, remember we talked about the reduction in income. For every dollar that they earn, 50% is taken off of after the first $85 a month in income. Excuse me. There is no reduction as long as you're below the now $1,310 substantial gainful activity amount. So if the person is making $500 a month, let's say, at their job, then they would get whatever income for Social Security. My daughter's, I think, is in the neighborhood of $880 now. She gets that plus whatever she earns in her part-time job with no reduction. So everybody's goal should be to get on the Social Security disability if the individual is working. The other benefit is after 24 months, they're eligible for Medicare. Okay, not just Medicare. Medicaid, they're eligible for Medicare. Oops.
While you're on that one, so if you have, I have a question here. So if you have SSI, do you apply for SSDI after 40 months of employment, or when do you apply? So if the only benefit of SSDI that you don't have hold on. So is the only benefit of SSDI that you don't have an income limit?
SSDI, you do have an income limit. That's the 1260. And this is one of the few things that this is not something that you have to do. It happens automatically. So as the individual is reporting their income under the SSI program, every month you have to report what you made. That's how it's being calculated. And then it's automatically going to morph. It's nothing that we have to do. We don't have to do a new application. We don't have to keep track of it. Social Security is keeping track of that. And then the individual's getting both SSI and SSDI. And then at the point where the SSDI is more than the SSI payment, then it's 100% SSDI. But you do have the income limit of 1310 in 2021.
Thank you.
Child Disability Benefits, CDB, formerly known as Disabled Adult Child. This is a very, very important benefit. One key is individual must have been continuously disabled prior to age 22. So this benefit is not for somebody who was 35 and got in a car accident and can't work anymore. This is really for the population of somebody who was born with a disability, may work part-time or not at all. This applies to somebody who doesn't work at all and has no income. Once a parent retires, becomes disabled, or dies, this kicks in. And if the parent is living, it's 50% of what they call the primary insurance amount. What is that? That is what the parent would receive at their normal retirement age, their full retirement age. Okay, so for most of us that are still working, that is 67. Now, a lot of people think it's 65. For most of it, it's not, unless you're already retired. And it could be 66 in some months, but for most of us, it's 67. So whatever that number is, when we turn that on, our Social Security on, our child would receive 50% of that number as a child disability benefit. If the parent takes their Social Security early, the parent gets a reduced benefit. The child still receives 50% of what they would have, the parent would have received at their full retirement age. If the parent delays, the child still gets 50% of the full retirement age. So this is something we need to be cognizant of. And when a parent dies, then it goes up to 75%. So depending on your level of your child's level ability to earn an income, we need to be aware of how their income can affect this benefit. We certainly don't want our child making $1,400 a month consistently, and then they lose this major benefit available in the future.
I have 3 questions that popped up with this slide. Is it 50% of Social Security benefit?
The parent's Social Security retirement benefit at their full retirement age.
Is that for both parents that are getting retirement? So I guess the question
The
would be,
higher
would it be
of the
one or other?
two.
Thank you. Our son's SSI is about $529 a month, but he has no other income. Oh, hold on a second. Looks like we need to change his rent to get the full amount for him? Question mark. How do we go about this?
Probably call me, talk to me. I will walk them through. I have agreements. It really is a matter of going back to Social Security and saying, we're charging, letting them know, and it has to be fair market. Whoever's asking that question, I really should have a conversation with them, because they're not getting the right amount of Social Security, and there are ways around that, but I would want to have a little bit more information on that.
Okay, I will give them your contact information. And then another one just popped up. Does 50% benefit cause you to lose waiver benefits? Apart from SSI benefit, do you lose waiver benefits like day program and home support funding? I can answer that question with, that's the waiver is a DDS waiver. So I know on that it's different from SSI, that the waiver itself is something that it's according to the individual's level of need through DDS. I hope that helps, unless you have a different answer, Stuart.
Depending on how high that benefit is, you could have a Medicaid spend down because their income is too high. But that's a good problem to have because the income is too high. And then the money has to be spent on medical expenses. Any other questions?
That's it.
Okay, Medicare. Again, non-means tested, we all pay into the Medicare system. That's what the FICA taxes are and our paycheck. And you are eligible if you've worked 40 quarters and are 65 or older, or again, after receiving SSDI for 24 months, or those child disability benefits after 24 months. So my daughter right now is on Medicare because she's been on SSDI for 24 months. Now there are pretty much 4 different benefits. You have Part A, which covers a hospital, Part B, which covers the doctors. There are deductibles and co-insurance and all this, and that's where many people get what's called a Medicare supplement. Or they go with Part C, which is a Medicare Advantage plan. That's where the government's giving them an allocation of money to manage the care for the individual. That's where there could be restricted networks, but richer benefits than A and B. And then Part D is the prescription. Now, if you are duly qualified for Medicare and Medicaid, Medicaid pays Part B premiums, because there is a Part B premium, and the individual would qualify for Medicare Savings Program, MSP, that pays the deductibles and prescription drug co-pays. So somebody who reaches this level is very well covered for medical care. And that's where my daughter falls, and it's not an issue that we ever have. And she has been a high consumer of medical care. Connecticut Department of Aging and Disability Services.
Stuart, there's a quick question. Would DAC benefits disqualify you from Medicaid?
No.
Thank you. That was it. Thank you.
Okay. Let me back up on that. Again, you could have a spend down if the individual's income is so high that you're above the Connecticut Medicaid income level. And then there's this, what they call Medicaid spend down. But again, that's a good problem to have. Connecticut Department of Aging and Disability Services. This used to be called DOORS, Department of Rehabilitative Services. Trudy, I'm sure you remember that.
Absolutely.
Now it's called, they changed the name, Department of Aging and Disability Services. I'm told they don't want to be referred by the acronym DADS. Like they used to be called DOORS, they don't want to be DADS. This is under the Bureau of Rehabilitative Services, or I'm sorry, the Bureau of Rehabilitative Service, BRS, is under that. And most folks that are coming into the system will be familiar with BRS now, because they are the ones that do the level of need. Correct, Trudy? You have to go through the evaluation of the ability of the individual to be competitively employed now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to point out, because I don't know who the audience is out there, some folks that do not qualify for Department of Developmental Services, Medicaid waiver programs, or brain injury like my daughter, maybe they are higher functioning autism, and they're not going to qualify for some of those support services. This is, excuse me, an avenue for short-term training and job evaluation. This is the same agency that if somebody was in a car accident and can't do what they were doing before, they want to be evaluated. What can I do? And my family personally used this twice. Once when Kelsey was younger. I think she was still maybe even in her after high school program, because she thought she would like to be in childcare. And so we went there. They found an employer that would do a evaluation. So the state hires an agency. It could be like somebody like Mark. This happened to be FAVAR, Farmington Valley ARC. And they did the evaluation. And this time my daughter failed at it because she just didn't follow their direction. She'd be playing games with a little toddler, and teacher would say, well, we got to do this now. And Kelsey would say, well, we're not done playing this game. So they determined that Kelsey did not fit that. Now, fast forward another 5 years, Kelsey's gone through her transition program, and she's actually running a cash register with a job coach there. And that's what Kelsey wanted to be, was a cashier. And she was hired competitively at a ShopRite when they opened as a cashier, but they quickly realized that her processing speed wasn't up to snuff, and the volume coming through, she couldn't do it. So they moved her to bagging, and she stuck that out for years, but she really wanted to be a cashier. We went back to BRS. They did another evaluation at Walgreens, and Walgreens ended up hiring her as a cashier, and she did that job for several years, and she at first really enjoyed it. Kelsey's last job, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of Beans & Co., but it's a coffee shop in Avon that hires 50% of the individuals have special needs, and that's where she was working pre-COVID. So I do want to encourage people, BRS can work. I do hear other people say it did nothing for my child, but my family is a success story there. Any questions, Trudy?
Yep. Are there other ways in which you can lose your benefits? For instance, an increase in IQ?
I don't believe they test IQ, and I don't believe they believe that the IQ changes. I would, depending on how old the child is, I would not, if you have a IQ that's lower, I would never have my child, if possible, IQ tested again. So I don't know how old the individual that we're talking about it, but if somebody is out of school, they're not going to go back and test them for their IQ.
Yeah.
Trudy, you know much about Community First Choice?
Not really.
Okay. I wish to say I was a complete expert on this, but I'm not. But it is something that works well for some people. This is a program offered to anybody who's eligible for Medicaid. So anybody in the DDS service is automatically eligible for this. This is under the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. It can provide assistance with preparing meals, household chores, ADLs, bathing, dressing, community activities, doctor's appointments, errands. It is self-directed, unlike what Mark does. The individual or family are the ones that are hiring the individual. They get a budget, and you need to hire your own staff. You cannot go to Mark and say, here, do this for me. You are the employer, you hire, you fire. There is a fiscal intermediary being allied that pays the individual and does a background check on them and things like that. But you, your family are the employers. Now you can hire a family member, but they cannot be a guardian or conservator. So if mom is the guardian, mom cannot be paid. But if only one of the parents is, then one can be. I have clients where a sibling is providing the after school care until mom gets home and is being paid through this program to do that. Any money awarded under this program will come off any DDS budget. It is an entitlement. There is no waiting list. That's what I've been told, but there's a very long processing time. So, Trudy, I see you have a question. Yes.
Yeah,
No?
it says.
Can't hear you now.
Oh, hello?
Oh, that's my fault. Hang on. I'm going to keep going when my phone turns back on because that's what happened. It died. Wasn't planning on using the phone. So I'll go back to whatever question that we have. Okay, ABLE accounts. ABLE accounts have been around now for over 4 years. They were Connecticut just started their own program back in October. What an ABLE account is if you're familiar with a 529 college savings plan, it is modeled after the 529 college savings plan. It's just for somebody who has a disability. So it allows somebody to put money in and have that money grow tax free, and the money can be pulled out and used for what they call disability related expenses, which is a pretty broad category, and not pay tax on that money either. The maximum that can go in there in any given year is $15,000. And once the account reaches $100,000, SSI is suspended. But I would not recommend anybody put too much money in there because the last bullet point there, upon the death of the beneficiary, there's a requirement to pay back the state for any Medicaid services after the account has been established. What does that mean? Your individual, your loved one passes away, the state is first in line to recoup anything that they spent through DDS. Hang on one second. Trudy, I'm calling you back.
Okay.
Trudy, can you call me? Because the number's not here.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was working. So the questions that we have, well, one was actually, someone stated, research was just announced today that students with autism are known to jump as much as 5 points between 16 and 23.
Really?
And then why, it is, I don't know why it's echoing, community first choice, why can it not be a guardian?
It's part of the law.
And then what advantage does an ABLE account have over an SNT?
Very good question. Because I have a whole nother presentation on the basics of what it means to have a child with special needs. An ABLE account and a SNT stands for Special Needs Trust. There's essentially two types of special needs trusts. There's what's called a first party special needs trust, and then there's what's called a third party special needs trust. A first party special needs trust is when it's the individual's own money. So let's say there was a lawsuit, medical malpractice lawsuit, or I've seen cases where somebody's been bit by a dog and they were awarded $80,000 in one situation. That money is the individual's own money. That money would have to go into what's called a first party special needs trust, because otherwise they would have too much money in their name, the $1,600 or the $2,000 for Social Security, and they would be ineligible for any of the benefits that are means tested that we've been talking about. On a first party special needs trust, when the individual passes away, just like an ABLE account, money goes back to the state for any Medicaid services that were provided. A third party special needs trust, which is what everybody on this call should have, that is the bucket that any money that a parent is going to leave upon the parent's death, that's where that money goes. That money, we get to name where that goes upon the death of our loved one, that the beneficiary of the trust. The government does not look at that as an asset available to the individual, because it's not their money, it's somebody else's money that they left in trust to supplement any benefits, to provide for the nice things in life, so things that the government's not going to do for our loved one. So we all should have this special needs trust. So the answer to the question, what's the difference, or it's not one or the other. My daughter has an ABLE account. We also have a special needs trust. The special needs trust has no money in it. It's just waiting for my wife and I to pass away. That's when that special needs trust gets filled. It can be filled while we're still alive, but there's no need to do that, and there's no advantage to do that. The advantage of the ABLE account is the tax advantage. A special needs trust pays taxes just as we pay taxes. Okay. An ABLE account is a tax advantaged account. But my recommendation is we don't put too much money into an ABLE account. One thing we can do with money left over in an ABLE account, upon the passing of our loved one, the ABLE account can still pay for disability related expenses, including a funeral. Okay, so I would not recommend using an ABLE account as a place where we put a lot of money over time for the benefit of our child. I view the ABLE account as short to medium term money, and making sure that there is money going into the special needs trust upon the passing of the parents is where we should be focusing on the financial planning of what we do for our loved one. So very good question. And actually that does segue into what actually is the last slide. Do we have any other questions, Trudy?
Not at this time.
Okay. So special needs planning is really planning for two generations, ours and our loved one with special needs. We have to plan for ourselves, but what makes us different than typical families is both on the legal as well as the financial side. On the legal side, we're all supposed to have wills, power of attorney, healthcare directives. Every typical family is supposed to have that. What we need is the additional document, which is the special needs trust, that protects any money that we're going to pass on to that next generation, our child with special needs, so that it's not affected by that inheritance isn't going to be, their benefits aren't going to be in fact affected by that benefit. I mean, that inheritance. Now, on the financial side, the difference between a typical family and a family that has a loved one with special needs is that a typical family can say, well, I have two kids, I'm leaving them 50-50. And the question inevitably would be, well, how much is that? And the answer, I don't know, whatever's left. Each kid's getting 50%, whatever's left. I don't know how much is going to be left. When we have a child with special needs, it really changes that dynamic. We know we want to leave money to fund that special needs trust when we're no longer here. That's why the planning is different. And that's really what I do. I help families deal with that financial side of things. I bring attorneys in that know what they're doing in terms of drafting the legal documents that are in place. And then we look at the government benefits and make sure that we're maximizing what we can get for what is out there for our loved one. So typically, Trudy, if we were in a room right now, I would hand out an evaluation form and say, if anybody, please complete my evaluation. And I, encourage people to give me good grades, because my wife, who works with me, would see all these. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, that would be, I would like more information. And if you want more information, then my wife would reach out to you and see about, now it would be setting up a Zoom call so that I would look at your specific situation and give you more individual advice on what I think you may be wanting to look at. I do not charge for these consultations. If we need to move ahead and look at some legal work, obviously there's fees for that. But so with that, unless there's any other questions, how do we do on time, Trudy?
Yeah, pretty good. Someone said, this has been very helpful, concrete answers to real world questions.
So I'm right in West Hartford, not that that matters anymore. It is weird doing this with COVID, but I even do attorney meetings, three-way attorney meetings. You can sign things now, legal documents. We do a lot of insurance planning in this world of special needs. That all can be done. But I have to go back to my Leonardo quote here. I added that. Somebody showed me that, and I think this is perfect. Knowing is not enough, we must apply. Being willing is not enough, we must do. I can't tell you how many times people have seen me speak and then they see me years later and I look at them and I recognize them and they tell me, yeah, I've seen you speak 3 times, and they just haven't gotten around to doing things. I will help you get to where you need to be, where you know you've done the planning that needs to be done that will allow you to sleep better at night. Knowing that you've taken concrete steps to plan for the future of your loved one. So with that, everybody please stay safe out there, and let me know if I can help in any way.
Thank you for your presentation, Stuart.
My pleasure.
Stay
Good
safe.
night.
Good night. Good night, everyone.